Yes, I marked everyone that's in the in this conference as present, so you can have class participation. Um, yeah, and so let me just maybe I wanted to just check in with you guys. How are you guys doing? Uh,
Oh, you muted yourself, Professor.
okay, there we go. Um, but how are you guys doing?
Well, again, I finally got a job at the Bronx Zoo, and then I was able to work
Wow,
3 days, and then they said, what, stay home. And I was like, well, all right, that's cool.
that
So
sucks.
it's a part time. Yeah, it's part time. It's supposed to last until November, and apparently this lockdown thing is supposed to last for a couple months, if not till the end of the year.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's gonna be for longer than August, and very very scary. And I think we're all getting adjusted. Yeah.
Hmm.
And anyone else? Yeah. Okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to. I think that also I wanted to see just how you guys are feeling about the rest of the semester here at BMCC. Do you feel like you're able to continue on either by doing these virtual classrooms or by just participating in the discussion boards, or do you feel like there are things that you really won't be able to do anymore as a result of this quarantine?
Uh, I I think I'll be able to pull it off. It's just the fact of remembering to be able to, just the fact of remembering to log into these conference calls, which I'm sure isn't going to be too hard.
Yeah.
Other than that, I feel like I can continue doing my schoolwork.
Yeah. Um, if you're feeling doubts about it, I think that right now is the time we're all questioning things. So I just want you to know that I'm going to be very very lenient with grading this semester because I think it's only fair because a lot of you, a lot of us, suddenly we have no way of doing a lot of things we thought we could do now. So um, and I want this to also be useful to you and of interest to you. I think it's kind of amazing that we're doing this class at the same time as there's this global pandemic that's, very much China has very much been discussed uh, ever since this started because that was the origin of it. And I don't know how many of you guys are watching the news, but now Trump and his administration are all uh, very explicit about calling it a Chinese virus. Does anybody have any thoughts or reactions to that?
I mean, when he says Chinese virus, I think he means it like it's the Chinese people virus. It's not like it originated from China.
He's trying to
Like,
connect it to people, right?
yeah,
And it's rubbing a lot of people the wrong way because it can lead to hate crimes,
yeah.
which it
Actually,
has.
it's funny you mentioned that because I did see a video yesterday where this man was on the train berating an Asian man for just standing near the door.
Yeah, yeah. On social media, there's a lot of
Yeah,
these stories. Yeah, um, and I think that some of it is scary because sometimes social media overblows things, but then you do hear real incidents that have been confirmed by police and stuff like that of hate crimes and attacks. So it really seems very irresponsible for this president to be uh, to be baiting people into racist uh, behavior against Asians and Chinese.
right. And
So I think
Vanessa
it's
Hudgens,
not helpful at all.
right? Vanessa Hudgens as well. She was kind of undermining the severity of the Wuhan or coronavirus. in a Instagram post she had actually.
Yeah.
She was like, oh, it's inevitable that people are going to die from this. So, she just had a very like lackadaisical manner about it. Like, just get over it kind of manner about the whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. I saw that with Vanessa Hudgens. Who saw that? Who else? Did anybody else see that? Anyone else have that thoughts about that?
I
It's
mean, like,
it's
sorry, continue, Professor.
oh, for me, I was like, oh, I think I had that thought process a little bit, like where I was like, oh, it's only this percentage, 1 to 3%. But at the same time, if you think about that, if you think about how many people are getting infected, how many people could be infected, it's half of the world population. Then that's a
Right.
lot of people who are going to suffer, and that's unacceptable. I think
Right.
we can prevent it. Yeah. And what did you want to say, Matthew?
Uh, not gonna lie, I forgot.
Cool. Yeah. Um, well, for me, I think this is a good segue to talking about the writing assignment that we have. So I'm going to actually go all the way to the end of my slide to tell you about, or my PowerPoint presentation to tell you about the, um, the writing assignment. So I am going to give you guys the midterm that's going to be put up on a blackboard. And basically, instead of doing it in a class, I'm just going to do it at home, open book, open notes, and then you just give it back to me at this class. It is 5 short answer questions and 4 long answer questions, and you can choose out of 7 possible questions for the 4 long answer questions. And I tried to push it, shorten it, so for sake of our class, but and of course I will grade. I will be grading on a curve, like I'll be basing it on how much we're able to do. So, and so that will be. Please give that to me by next class, next Friday. We're gonna move on to read chapters 9 and 10 the following week. And if you didn't participate in this discussion, this virtual classroom, you will please respond to the discussion board prompt. And so the written assignment. So instead of having 2 written assignments like I often do for this course, we're just going to have 1 because we're kind of late in schedule. And in addition, we have all these complicating factors with the pandemic. So you're just going to do 1 written assignment. It's going to be either a paper at minimum 2 pages double spaced or a presentation, 5 minutes. So like a PowerPoint presentation that you can share with us, like, and we'll have a class for sharing. And in this assignment, all you are doing is reviewing an article from one of 2 resources. Our website called supchina.com, and I encourage you to go there, or South China Morning Post, which is at scmp.com. These are both great resources for learning about contemporary China, and I think it's going to be a way for us to connect our class to contemporary China in the time of the coronavirus pandemic. So let me take you, you guys, to some articles that I found, and maybe I could see what interest you guys even have related to these articles. So so does everyone see this this page of SupChina?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So it has just a whole group of different articles. So this is the sorry, this is an article, but the front page, you'll see already there's a lot of different articles related to just what's going on in China right now. So I would like you guys to choose one article that you find of interest and to review it, to kind of cover the main points of the article. what's the major argument that the author is giving, what your reaction is to it, how you can connect it to what we've learned about Chinese history and culture in this class, and can maybe connect it to your own personal experiences. So, so here's an example of some different articles that they have. This one is China defends expelling journalists. Trump defends use of Chinese virus. So this is very much about just contemporary issues right now. And we can see, oh, you do have to actually subscribe. Sorry. I didn't realize that you had to subscribe to all of these. Let's see about, is that a new, seems like that's a new thing, which I didn't realize. So I guess I'm gonna encourage you guys to subscribe to it, and maybe if I find a few different ones, I will put them up as PDFs.
All right.
So I think those are good plans. And I see that Zusui was saying it's pretty bad for you, forced to stay home and can't go to work, and yeah. So sorry to everyone. Sorry, Jusui, about the situation. Can I ask how people feel about this about, how about, let's start with the Chinese government. Does anyone have any thoughts about the Chinese government or at this time?
The Chinese government developed the coronavirus to combat the democratic people who were, rioting against, communism and whatnot. Because, they had all the Chinese patients. I don't know if that's the patient. They had all the patients, in the one building. And apparently that building was recently made. Was it a hotel, I believe it was? That hotel was recently made about 2 years ago, and then all of a sudden it collapsed, and I think everyone in it died. So,
I think I saw that was a few weeks ago in Fujian province. There was a whole place for quarantine for coronavirus patients, and it collapsed. 70 of them trapped in it.
Yep.
And that was, I think, last month. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So you're saying that it's also a ideological battle, right? Because you might have heard about the Hong Kong protests happening last year, and the fact that people generally see a lot of aspects of communism to be not to be authoritarian and totalitarian and counter to human rights and stuff like that. Do you guys? So Matthew, can I ask? Do you feel like are you blaming specifically the pandemic, what happened with the pandemic, somehow on the communist government?
I mean, that was a joke though. But seriously though, I do believe the Chinese government is partially to blame because, from what I remember correctly, apparently there was some sort of there was the SARS outbreak in 2003, which was a result of the coronavirus, and the Chinese government did nothing about it. They tried to downplay it back then, and now all of a sudden, we have all these other people getting the coronavirus now.
Mm-hmm.
So I believe if they had acted accordingly back then in response to the coronavirus, we'd probably, I'm sure we'd have some sort of vaccine, some sort of medicine against it now.
Yeah. So clearly, like, what is it saying about this government if it's reacting in these ways?
I believe it's trying to keep face more so than to help its people at this point.
That's a great point. It's really like keeping face as opposed to like it's just trying to act like it's a good benevolent government when a lot of times it's not acting in the interest of people, or it's not providing an adequate solution. It's not protecting its people. Another I think reason possibly for a lot of these pandemics has to do with the in the world that we live in, which is very, very capitalist and competitive, and everything is based around kind kind of money and profits. And certainly for China, had fallen behind because it was a communist country that was trying to rebuild itself, and eventually it was one of the most economically impoverished states by the 60s and 70s. So it tried very hard to adopt capitalism very quickly. So in a lot of ways, maybe what we're seeing with a pandemic is a result of rampant, unchecked capitalism that's kind of endorsed by and pushed by the state. Yeah, so it's ironic that a communist country, right, something that started out as communist and now communist kind of only by name, in a lot of ways, is so capitalistic. And one of the reasons why this happens is because of opening up wildlife animals in China to the economy, and saying that there was no regulation anymore. They allowed people to farm wild animals, and this virus was an animal to human transfer. So you can see the same thing in other pandemics in recent history. HIV, due to increasing development in Africa, the fact that humans came into closer and closer contact to chimpanzees because there was just more and more urbanization and more growth of industrialization. And so we have to think about nature and what we're doing to the world around us, and how we're creating huge imbalances due to capitalism. For me, that's my opinion. Yeah. What do you guys think? I just kind of ranting and raving. Hi, is that Jonathan Forty? Let me ask that in the chat. Who do you blame anyone for the pandemic? If so, why? Okay. In particular, I asked some people might be mad at the Chinese state. I gave an argument for why I think capitalism is to blame. What about you? So I'd love to see if you guys have an answer.
Oh,
sorry. Who was that just now?
Me.
Frederick? Can you say it a little louder?
I can't really hear.
You can't hear me right now? Can you hear me?
I can hear you right now. Was somebody speaking?
I thought someone was speaking, but I couldn't, it was too low. So, yeah. So Shang Zhang said, what if the coronavirus started from the US? Yeah, so I agree. Like, What do you mean, Jiang Xiang?
What if we ate bats first?
No, you said what if we ate bats for? Well, I think, I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, but the thing is that
Mhm.
this could occur with any kind of animal to human interaction, and I think she's already saying, well, what if the opposite happened?
Right.
Would there be as much? Would we call it an American virus? Would people do that, or is it easier for people to cast kind of racist ideas towards people who are non-white?
I mean, I think it'd be, a lot worse because, Trump, he's always like, oh yeah, America's great, make America great again, you know, country of dreams and hopes and all that. So if we were to have started the coronavirus, I believe there would have been a lot of blow up,
Like we just if we were to
Everyone would be attacking the U.S.
at the same time, one thing I was thinking about was with any other president other than Trump, we would have been able to, first of all, we would have had a much more immediate response. We would have quarantined people immediately. Um, we would have had tests. We might have led the led the rest of the world and given resources to the rest of the world. And that a lot of times that was what U.S. was known for doing, is kind of being this benevolent leader for the rest of the world. And so, I I think Trump is really trying to deflect blame from his bad leadership. It has gotten us into this position where now we have to all stop what we're doing. Or, I mean, we probably had to do something comparable to this because it's affecting the whole world. But yeah, I think I guess I'm blaming the president on at least this response in the U.S., which maybe I can't. No one to blame. Like I agree, Jonathan. You're saying I don't blame anyone. I mean, it's all of our responsibility. This is why it's a pandemic. It's affecting everyone. Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah,
same
everyone's.
thing. Yeah, New York has the most. Why do you think, Samantha? Why do you think New York has the most cases in the U.S.?
I thought Connecticut did.
I think they're all pretty bad. I mean, for one thing, I think one of the main reasons why New York has the biggest cases is because it's the biggest, most populous city in the United States. There's no getting around that. So
Right.
I think, yeah, and mass transportation, right? No, and Zhang Jiang says nobody cares. Yeah. Oh, I don't think we have 6K. Not in. Oh, maybe in New York State we have 6K cases.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. Okay, but in New York City right now it's like 1,600 cases. So yeah, but that's very interesting. Yeah.
I mean, I know here in the Bronx is like I think it was almost 500 cases and like almost 100 people died so far.
It's scary. Yeah. So, well, or I did want to take you to that other site that I mentioned. So SCMP, the South China Morning Post. So South China, it is Hong Kong based. So maybe you can say that it has a little bit of a bias, but it's also very, I think, just a good resource for news, just because it's so active and
Yeah,
comprehensive.
Brooklyn has the most.
But you can take a look. So, for speaking of how did the coronavirus happen? Well, they have a few articles. If you look up pangolin scale smugglers, talking about, does anybody know about the pangolins?
Yeah, aren't they like? Well, they're kind of like armadillos.
Yeah, they're like armadillos. They're these mammals with cute scales, and they're like anteaters. Yeah. And people are saying that this research is still out, but it's still being done. But people argue that it might have been transmitted from bats to pangolins to humans, and pangolins are a huge black market for pangolins in China. And
right, because scales are apparently used for medicine.
Yeah, they have like some
Wow, New York has
reputation for having a herbal medicinal usage, and that's unfortunate. Yeah. Um, so I think this might be a good article for you guys to look into. So it says the title is "Pangolin Scaled Smugglers: A Few Culprits Caught by the Masterminds Behind the Illegal Wildlife Trade Evade Arrest." So, yeah, pretty. I think obviously this is something happening in a part of China, but I think I'm interested in learning more about these issues and how they can tell us more about contemporary Chinese society, but also in a way that's not like these weird Chinese people, because we all know that it's more complicated than that. We're all human beings, we're all people, and we're all studying. And this is why you guys are in this course, to study a different part of the world that that has very it's 1/6 of the world population. It's complicated and it's not one thing. So, yeah. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, older people are more likely to be infected. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Is that what's going on in the group chat? I'm missing out from the group chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. But at the same time, anyone can get affected, and if you're asymptomatic, meaning if you don't show symptoms, you still can pass it. So everyone, it's a very serious quarantine.
Right. There was a celebrity who was asymptomatic, if I'm remembering correctly.
I'm sure there was. Yeah.
I forgot who it was.
Yeah. A lot of like all the Nets and various sports players and coaches have been reported to have it, and they seem to be able to access the tests a lot easier because they're under constant medical
Money.
yeah. Some money. It's a good point, Jonathan. Yeah. So, yeah. Well, I think this will help. Yeah, hopefully, yeah, Idris Elba got it. Yeah. So it's very scary. Okay, well, let me move on. You guys I like how you guys are keeping the chat going, so I appreciate that. So let me go back to the thing. I know this is not an amazing seg, but I'm just gonna try to simplify it as best I can. Our lessons, and so just major takeaways, and so yeah. Let me go back to.
Did you send the midterm?
I will send the midterm. That will be in our Blackboard's assignments. I haven't done it yet, but so you're gonna get it in the Blackboard assignments today, and then I will accept it until next week, and I will even accept late ones too, and I will be very lenient. So I probably won't do any late penalties anymore because it's just not it's not the most important thing right now. Yeah.
Now, what's gonna happen with that big project we were supposed to do, like towards the end of the semester?
Yeah. So instead of that, it's gonna be we were just looking at articles, right?
Okay.
So it's gonna be just one written assignment. It's just either a paper or presentation that reviewing one of the articles from either of the two sources about contemporary China.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you'll see the last slide when I go back to it. Yeah. Okay, so let's just get into it. So I'm not going to cover everything in the slides. We're talking about the Song Dynasty, which was occurred after the Tang Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty collapsed after it was very much destroyed by that crazy rebellion waged by that northerner guy, An Lushan. And he really weakened the Tang Dynasty. Even though it kept going for a while, it never was the way it was before. And you just saw increasing kind of diminishing of its power. So by the time of the Song Dynasty, China had divided up again, and the Song Dynasty picked up different northern and southern dynasties again were playing out. So again, it was kind of separated by north and south. And during the Song Dynasty, the Song Dynasty was occupied a smaller amount of space
Mhm.
than the Tang Dynasty, and some people say that it had a greater emphasis on cultural identity, a greater emphasis on defining what it meant to be part of this Song Dynasty, what it maybe meant to be Han Chinese, and it might have led to more distinction between Han Chinese and foreign people. So I think you see in this picture in my slide a picture of a movie called Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. The movie takes place later on. It takes place in the Qing Dynasty. But has anyone seen that movie by any chance?
I have not. What was the name of the movie?
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Sounds like a kung fu move.
Yeah, it is a kung fu movie. But in the movie, you see two characters here, and the woman is like kind of a wealthy daughter of an official, like a princess almost, and she runs away into the west and gets together with this guy who's one of the more Western tribes. So I think we've already talked in class about different Central Asian groups like the Xiongnu and all these Turkic groups. By the time you get to the Song Dynasty, there's another group, and they are called the Khitan. So Khitan, Khitan in northeastern China. And so they found the Liao Dynasty in an area that's right next to Korea, and it's like this section that's just right next to Korea in the northeast of China, and even so they were so they kind of were they helped the Song Dynasty to administrate that area of China. But you can see that even in the second half of the Song Dynasty, it also divided up into a northern and a southern Song Dynasty. And the northern Song Dynasty was taken over by another group of people that created the Jin Dynasty. So it's very complicated, but I think you can see how, again, northern tribes end up being a powerful force in China. So let's keep going. A lot of times people consider the Song Dynasty be a modern dynasty, a modern dynasty. So I want you, what they mean is that the Song Dynasty had a lot of advancements, in technology, and was generally doing well, I think. But I want to ask you guys, what does modern mean to you?
I believe modern would mean having some sort of machinery that works.
Machinery that works.
Mm-hmm. Like cars, some sort of technology, really. Well,
something new.
Well, I wouldn't say new.
New machines that work. Zhang said advanced.
Innovative.
Innovative. Ooh, I like that. Innovation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jonathan said innovation. Yeah. So a time where you could see like a lot of development happening. When do we usually think of as modern in general history, or maybe even in European history, beginning of modern times?
I mean, you think of the 18th century kind of stuff. Like when you say modern,
Hmm.
like in a classroom setting, I'd say
Both?
I well in a classroom setting in like but generally modern times would mean like old time like black and white photos here in the U.S. and whatnot. You know.
Hmm. I like that you said the 18th century, right? Like that was the time where there was all this crazy industrialization
Mm-hmm.
in Europe and in America, like these, and when we started trains and cars and all this stuff, right? So
Yeah.
and and sometimes people argue even, some like, so you can see in my slide, and um, basically in my slide I'm saying, okay, in our book on page 100 it says, unfortunately, um, like it gives the fact that the Song dynasty was the modern times of China gives it a impression that it was a perpetually static civilization, and it obscures the remarkable progress made by Chinese. So um, I think he's trying to say that, like, we have some Eurocentrism when we look at China. We see them as having reached a moment of modernism pretty early on in like the 1100s, 1200s, and where we ask, why did they not advance? And we think it's because the Chinese people maybe are too follow the rules too much or something, or they didn't follow God, they followed some other weird superstition or stuff like that. And then the Europeans, they advanced, they reached enlightenment, and they reached their modern times in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. And so another issue around the idea of modernity is it makes it seem like everything else in the past was horrible and bad, right? And that's kind of one of the issues of this idea of modernism, is it kind of gives this idea of history just kind of advancing up and up and up and up and up.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes when you keep going up and up and up, what happens? I mean, we're witnessing it right now.
You crumble down.
Yeah, eventually you gotta come down.
Equilibrium. You know what I appreciate about Chinese culture? Balance. Taoism, the way, yin yang, right? You need balance. And I don't see that in a lot of like European conceptions of how things go. So, and I think this is a great example. We really strained, our the capitalist system even in China at this point. You can see, and what are the results of that? This pandemic. Of course, I can't blame everything on this pandemic. This pandemic happens out of the blue. Everything that happened, a lot of things that happen in history are just pure incident, and then we make meaning out of it. but yeah. So yeah. So continuing on. Let me see. Okay. What else is the Song Dynasty known for? Well, the Song Dynasty is known for really, really, really building up this scholar official order. So the class of people who were part of the administration of the empire, who were various officers of various ranks, were also extremely good scholars. Have we seen the emphasis on scholarship in Chinese culture so far in Chinese history before?
Yeah.
What was that response?
We said yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's the basis of Confucianism, right? How to be a gentleman, how to be a nobleman, right? It's just that in the Song Dynasty, they really bolstered it. So we talked about the last week that we were together about how the Tang Dynasty started the imperial service exams. Well, you can see here that it kept going. There was a regularization of the exam system. The exam would happen every 3 years. There was a 10% pass rate for the first 2 levels, and half of the people who passed were from new families. So that is a great example of how this was a pretty good system of meritocracy, which we talked about last week. So yeah. The downside of this is that there were a lot less military force. The Song Dynasty was not good at administrating war, military things, and they basically outsourced all of their military might to mercenaries, to assassins, who a lot of them were people from the northern and western tribal people. Yeah. So yeah, let's go on. Yeah, any thoughts? Feel free to ask any questions at any time. One really cool thing about this time period is it tells us something about how we, like the different names that we call this area of the world, China. Has anyone heard the word Cathay? C-A-A-Y?
Repeat that.
No.
No?
No.
Raise, reply to the chat or say yes if you've seen, if you've heard of Cathay.
Oh.
Samantha said she's never heard of it before. Zhen Jiang said she's heard of the Cathay Bank.
Xiang Jiang has heard of the Cathay Bank.
Yep.
Xiang Jiang, do you know what it's referring to?
Money.
Qidan. Yes, the Qidan, exactly, the Khitan. So this people, it's yes. But a lot of people consider Cathay to be all of China. So basically Cathay was referring to the Khitan or the Qidan, the northeastern tribes of people. And it just so happens that they were in the seat of power when Europeans started to understand this place. In particular, Marco Polo, who is going to be coming through, traveling through the Silk Road and even visit the Emperor of China, but in the following dynasty when it's ruled by Mongols. And he continues to call it Cathay after the Qidan. So it shows something about the fact that China was not China. It was Cathay. It had more to do with who was ruling the place, and it was usually the northern people. Yeah, yeah. Another group of people at this time are called the Xia, the Western Xia people, who were a mix of Tangut, Uyghur, Tibetan, and Chinese, and they're also in the West. And so, yeah, very interesting stuff. Thanks, Xiangjiang, for that connection. Okay, this is my favorite part of this week. Okay, so one really interesting thing that happened in the Song Dynasty was that one of those scholar officials was a minister named Wang Anshi. And he created this thing called the Green Sprouts Act, the Qing Mao Fa, Qing Mao Fa. Yeah, wait, yeah, right. Am I saying it right, Chinese folks? Yeah. So the Green Sprouts Act. But take a look at the policies.
Qing Miao Fa. Yep.
Can as we look at these policies, tell me, what does this sound like to you? Have you guys seen other examples of stuff like this? And what kind of ideology or idea does it try to carry out?
Let's see. Wait, isn't this like capitalism? Hold on.
So we see borrowing loans, insurance or disaster insurance, like farm. What is it like? I'm thinking of Geico or something. Geico, right?
Right.
Price controls. So not allowing price. Not allowing things to be overpriced. Extended credit, so more loans or to small businesses, and tax reform, more sensible distribution of grain to needy areas. Does that sound like anything that we know about, maybe in an American context?
Yeah.
Like what? Um, like, let's see. So, so a lot of these are these helping out rich people or poor people?
Yeah, they're helping out the poor people.
Helping
Yeah.
out the poor people. It's definitely for like number 2, insurance for bad harvest and natural disaster, because that's bound to happen. So, gotta protect what you have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's you're just saying it's common sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, this looks a lot like a lot of socialism. So
Right.
I called it the Chinese New Deal. Does anybody know? Can anyone tell me what the New Deal was in America?
Oh crud.
So in the 1930s, after the huge stock market crash of 1929, America went into a huge, great
Great depression.
depression. And what did the president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, do to address
Oh,
this?
he signed the New Deal.
He
Jeez.
signed the New Deal, which did a lot of things, various things. It gave a lot of people jobs to do in public works, like making dams, making roads,
Right.
all this stuff. It loaned out, housing, and created Social Security, a system that still exists to this day, that allows for people when they retire to be able to collect some amount of Social Security, some amount of money that can come in even if they're not working, right?
Mm-hmm. It also resulted in the Democratic Party, actually.
Yeah, and in a lot, yes, it reshaped and it created the Democratic Party we know today. I actually don't know that much about it. Matthew, you want to share more about how to create the Democratic Party? I actually don't know that much.
Well, it's just all about well, again, like you said, it's just a whole bunch of forms, regulations and whatnot that resulted in the people, benefiting greatly and being able to provide for the country uh, in a regular way. Here, let me actually look it up so I could get some proper information.
Let me see.
Based on liberal ideas. Let's see. Oh man. Yeah, the New Deal produced a political realignment, making the Democratic Party the majority. With its base in liberal ideas, the South, their traditional ideas, Democratic big city machines, and the newly empowered labor unions were able to benefit greatly from all these reforms signed off by Franklin Delano Roosevelt.
Yeah, so it suddenly aligns what the Democratic Party was doing to the labor movement, to fighting for workers' rights. So yeah, very good. Let's see, any other responses from anyone? Okay. Well, so unfortunately, this was not, even though this is kind of note in Chinese history, it was not successful. There were Chinese, it did not actually kind of happen. There were a lot of more conservative scholars that objected to it, and it was only partially implemented and eventually disappeared. So, but I think what might it say that this plan even existed at this time in the Song Dynasty? What does it say about China at this time? Was maybe was it open to equal society in some ways, or allowing for protections of people?
I believe so. Yeah, they definitely took a step in the right direction a lot earlier than.
Yeah, is that an example of modernism? Yeah,
Definitely.
maybe. You guys agree? So I'm gonna put. I think this is an example of socialism, right? Which means a system to protect all people in a society, um, yeah, do you agree with socialism? That's a great question, even in this today, right? Because right now we have two Democratic nominees, Biden and Bernie.
Yeah,
Which one is more socialist?
Biden.
No.
It's
No,
not. No,
Bernie.
wait. Cause I'm thinking, cause everyone's
Oh,
like, oh, Bernie's communist.
oh.
No.
Well,
Yeah.
it's really interesting. Biden is basically he is basically adopting a lot of things that Bernie agrees with.
Really.
So in a way, he is espousing a lot of socialist ideas, but
Mm.
I think he's trying to do it in a very American vocabulary, a very American affect. Like he's still trying to act like a cowboy, and trying to make people get on his side or something like that. Yeah. Okay, well, let me move on. Another sign of modernity in the Song Dynasty is that we do see evidence of greater economic prosperity amongst just general populations. There are new social organizations. When the Jin took the north in the second half of the Song Dynasty, and the Song retreated from Kaifeng to Hangzhou. Kaifeng is a northern city where actually some of the earliest there's a Chinese Jewish population from back like
What?
the
Really?
1000. Yeah, Kaifeng Jews. You have to look up the Kaifeng Jews. I'm gonna look at let me put that in. But they moved down south to Hangzhou, which is a more southern city, and they retreated. So at this time, when the Song Dynasty was more concentrated in the south part of China, there were larger yields of rice because it is further south, and I think you just see like an increase in agricultural yield. Urban life became freer. You had cities that start to be more comparable to the cities that we see today, where people are freely able to walk around in city squares and commercial districts. Markets were independent of the state, so they didn't even the state was pretty hands off at the same time as maybe trying to adopt socialist systems. It was also kind of hands off. It was a more mobile society that led to more merchant cooperations and clan associations. In the past, from the Zhou dynasty to the Han dynasty, we talked about how sometimes the merchants were either put on the bottom of the class structure or kind of not really considered because they were a little unusual. Sometimes they were very rich, sometimes they were very poor. And here you see that the merchants are doing very well in the Song dynasty. And this is the time when you see a lot of merchant co-ops, merchant cooperations, and clan associations. So like family associations, individual families are getting wealthier that aren't necessarily even connected to the state, and they're creating associations. And associations are some of the major organizing bodies of a lot of overseas Chinese communities. So you see on this slide 2 pictures of 2 associations that still exist in New York's Chinatown community. One is the Lee Family Association that has companies like Lee Insurance. And this is on Pell Street, if you've ever been down to Chinatown. There's a lot of hot pot there. And the one on the right is a really cool building that is the Anyang Tong. Tong means dong in Mandarin Chinese, and that was one of the major merchant associations in Chinatown. So, yeah. Anyone familiar with these associations in Chinatown or has seen them?
Not really.
No, I mean, for my times that I've been in Chinatown, I don't think I've seen any of these. But I mean, I'll keep an eye out for them next time I go down.
Yeah, next time we get the chance to, right?
Yeah.
We don't know, but yeah. I guess let me ask you: anyone's families or extended family owns businesses or is involved in trade? Or
Not yet, unfortunately.
yeah, my family is not really, except for a few uncles that own factories in Taiwan. um,
Huh.
uh, other than that, my direct parents don't. Yeah,
Mhm.
but I think it's an interesting because I think that is one of the driving forces. The trade outside of the state. Yeah.
Right.
So cool. Well,
Oh
let's move
wow,
on.
it's a
So,
straight line from BMCC actually. Well, almost a straight line. Wow.
oh, one of them is like really close to BMCC.
Yeah, the Anyang Chinese Merchants Association, the what is it? Pangolinian? How do you say it? The Paladin thing. Jeez.
Pangolin.
Yeah, that. No, not pangolin. The building, Anyang Town building.
Uh,
I'm having a brain fart right now. Palanquin, I think it's called.
oh,
Palanquin.
oh, okay. It's close to the Anyangtang.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool, great.
Hmm.
Well, let's keep moving. So another thing that so Stephanie, who I don't think she's here right now, but she wanted to know about foot binding. And so foot binding did develop in the Song Dynasty, a dynasty that is seen to be a modern time that gave a lot of the Han Chinese more economic freedoms.
Right.
At this time, you do see a practice of foot binding. Anybody know what foot binding is and want to summarize it for the class?
Sure, I'll go ahead. So foot binding was a practice that Chinese parents would use. Well, actually Chinese, but like high class, I should say. Like upper class, that upper class women would have done to them, and that they would have their feet twisted and broken at a
Yeah,
young age, so that it would grow to be a small shape. And apparently, that was seen as a very high class, very attractive thing back then.
Yeah, yeah. It was like sometimes there seemed to be lotus flower, like lotus buds, like
Hmm.
and does anybody want to tell me why lotuses are an important aspect in Chinese culture?
Mm,
Because of Buddhism. Buddhas always sit underneath a big lotus flower,
oh,
which is very symbolic of reincarnation. So yeah. So yeah, and yeah. So it's interesting that this thing is happening, especially amongst high class people. So it's like high class people. There's and and it made you seem like you were favorable because maybe it made it seem like you these women didn't have to do any work, right, for their lives. So it kind of had this idea that your family had money or was were able to just uh, just be pretty
right.
and not do anything. And of course, this is a very painful thing that I'm sure has repercussions for the rest of your life. Very, very sad. And this isn't a practice that still exists late on. And uh, one of our classmates even said, "Oh, she knew a teacher who said that."
You're breaking up a lot, Professor.
Oh,
Sorry.
you're bringing up. Can't really hear.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, no.
Okay, I think it's lagging. I should talk a little less. So thank you for letting me know. So why do you guys think this bookbinding is occurring in this time period?
Well, due to all these merchants getting wealthy and whatnot, I believe families are trying to do what they can to ensure like other high class, like they're trying to ensure that their families will keep being in power, keep being rich,
Mm,
or try to raise their class, I should say, as well.
yeah, maybe there's more money, more problems, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. How about any women out there want to have let us know your opinions. Yeah, for me, it's kind of almost showing how women are starting to be a commodity and a thing to be traded between families. So, not and of note is the fact that many lower classes and people who weren't really assimilated into the Han Chinese culture did not do foot binding at all. So a lot of people of lower class and who did non-popular Han Chinese populations did not foot bind. I mean, I will tell you, I'm Taiwanese, native Taiwanese, and my grandparents were not foot binding. I think it has to do with other things, like the fact that they lived under a time of Japanese occupation and other stuff. So I mean, I just would say, personally, I've not experienced any kind of any direct examples of binding in their family history that they know of.
Thankfully, no.
Yeah, I think by the time of the 20th century, it really was clamped down. Yeah. Okay, well, the other thing in this slide is a picture of a beautiful ceramic, form of ceramic, and there were, China because of fine china, right? The porcelain that we create, but a lot of times people think of the china as just with the white body and the blue glaze, but you can see here that there's other examples in Chinese culture too. It just so happens that one, the white body and the blue glaze porcelain just became popular in the world. Chinese ceramics is much more diverse than that. Okay, well, the other thing that really shows you how dynasty is a great example of a modern time is the new technology. We already talked about how the Silk Road that was very active in the Tang Dynasty allowed certain innovations to already pass through to Europe, with including paper, forms of paper, and print. But now you see here, it's not just print, but movable type, which is really important for newspapers and the printing press to be able to adapt that. And kind of the fact that Chinese language is based on these characters that are almost square shaped. It's a logographic language. It really lends itself to this movable type. Yeah. The other thing that is invented at this time in the Song Dynasty is fire powder, gunpowder, the chemical ability to cause an explosion. And eventually that's going to lead to guns and kind of firearms that you have, right? That was created right in the Song Dynasty back then. But you can see in this picture on the bottom left that it didn't start out looking like guns. There were, different kinds of things. They even would put fire powder, attach it to birds, and catapult the birds over into rival forts, or they would, yeah, it's fascinating. Here there's an example that's kind of like a spear and a fire gun kind of thing. So very interesting. We already Chinese culture had already created versions of compasses, but this was they developed a compass for maritime navigation, so for exploring the seas. And the Song Dynasty also developed better ships too. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to really quickly go through the fact that in the Song Dynasty, the major philosophies at this time were returning to Confucianism, but it was a new form of Confucianism called Neo-Confucianism. And it was both a way to compete with Taoism and Buddhism, which were very popular at this time, and Buddhism was the major kind of religion of the Tang Dynasty. But you do see a little bit of anti-Buddhist prejudice by the time of the late Tang Dynasty, and even the beginning of our chapter starts with a philosopher talking about how Buddhism is foreign and is ultimately not suitable for Chinese people, which I don't think that's true. Buddhism is huge in China, but so it was a challenge to Buddhism and Taoism at the same time as trying to kind of incorporate some of its ideas. So it did incorporate Taoist ideas of like being and non-being. So like how the empty space in a vessel actually creates the vessel, stuff like that. Very, very weird philosophy ideas like that. And yeah, Buddhist ideals like man being a part of nature. So great. And the Neo-Confucianism was also seen as a way of doing self-cultivation. How do we all do our own personal self-journeys of improving ourselves through mind, body, and spirit? And you can argue that Confucianism has always been a little bit of that. It's about learning how to be a gentleman, but this was really like, it's almost like doing self-education, taking education into your own hands. Yeah. So these are some ideas about it. The goal, the goal of self-cultivation should be reached by extension of knowledge through the investigation of things, the alternativeness of mind. So it's talking about how we have to be like kind of like scientists. We have to actually observe and come to conclusions ourselves, and we can't just always trust what other people tell us. We have to try to prove it ourselves based on our observations. So it's in a way like kind of trying to compete with Buddhist ideas of enlightenment, right? It's kind of like reaching nirvana too, but it was just called it Neo-Confucianism. And you'll see in the next few dynasties, Neo-Confucianism is going to become a more conservative thing. That's going to be an excuse for oppressing women and upholding patriarchal structures. So it's not always a good thing. Yeah. Okay. Last but not least, the Song Dynasty is also known for very beautiful paintings. Last week we talked about how the Tang Dynasty was known for its poetry, and I think you can't really separate any of these art forms from, and we can't from different time periods, because the truth of the matter is they developed throughout all time periods. It's just that the Song Dynasty happens to be very well known for this. And let's take a look at this picture together. Let's do some group observations so it's not so boring. I want to ask you guys, what do you think of this picture?
Is it painted or is it drawn by like pencil or ink?
What do you people think? Can anyone answer, Jonathan?
I think it was just drawn. Zheng Jiang said it was with ink.
Yeah. Like how do we do Chinese calligraphy?
With with ink, yeah.
Yeah, it's watercolor in a way. It's water and black ink. So right. It's kind of watercolor, right? So yeah. Based on what you now know about how it's done, does that give you greater appreciation for it?
Yeah,
it does, because being able to paint all of this without the ink going everywhere and being able to get all these faint lines and whatnot.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
What do you think the story is, or the message, or how does it make you feel?
She going into a river? I don't know.
You feel like he's going to what?
I think she's in. That's a he. Hold on.
It's probably going to be a he, unfortunately. I think because of he kind of seems to be one of those scholar types, who's very. I think it might even be the artist's self. So I think it is a he. Yeah. Well, he's not going into the river, but I understand why you're confused as to where he's looking and why he's going to anything. Is there anything there?
No, it's just looking out to nothingness.
What do you think it is? What do you think is there? Does
Uh, well, I don't. I mean, it looks like he's walking on a path towards nothingness, but I don't. I'm sure there's more to it. Is that in the lower left corner? Is that a person? Hold on.
yeah, yeah, it is. That's very interesting. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, I'm looking. I'm like that. I mean, it's a little black dot, and it looks like it's attached to like a weird body. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, what?
I
Right?
think it might have to be, he might be a servant to this person
Right.
who is of a high class. Yeah.
Hmm. Is he holding a paddle? What is that?
It is a guqin, which is a zither. It's
Is
it's like a harp that's like flat. Like if you put your guitar down flat and you played with the strings. You know
oh,
that?
I've seen that
Yeah.
before.
Yeah.
All right. So I suppose he's just standing and looking out towards something while that person is just like playing in the background
Yeah.
and whatnot.
Does it give you any feelings, like any emotions?
It makes me feel like he's trying to be zen.
Be Zen. Yeah. What does that mean? What does mean Zen mean?
Achieve inner peace, try to find and balance. Well,
Peace and
like how it says
balance.
on the slide here,
Yeah.
try to find their concept of balance.
So okay, let me oh, Zhang Jiang says he might be missing someone. It might be a mournful kind of thing. And
Mm.
and Zhang Jiang was uh the um the the poem we talked about last week. What is it called? That was also about missing someone too. So I think there's a little certain amount of mournfulness in in Chinese culture, maybe. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
This writing in the upper right corner, is that just like his like signature kind of thing? Like, hey, my name is this, it was written this, or what does that say?
you know what? That's a great question. I didn't think to look into that, but I think it's probably a couplet, like a saying, like a kind of yeah. It looks like it's 2 6-character sayings, and it's
Mhm.
it might actually be something to do with the title, but yeah, it is talking about some kind of god and bringing a horse up to this path. So I think, yeah, um, great. But this painting shows you how much empty space there is, and sometimes we call that negative space. So I think it's showing you how um, it's uh, it's almost a way to allow the viewer to imagine what's there, right? So it's showing you how you don't really have to necessarily paint everything in a space. You can also lead the viewer to their imagination. It's very tied to Taoist and Buddhist beliefs about being a part of nature. So there's a real emphasis on nature and natural order.
Yeah, I mean the name too says on a mountain path in a spring. So
Yeah.
so I'm just still fixated on
Yeah.
this painting.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
move on. So one of the things that we talk about uh, that distinguishes maybe Chinese painting from a lot of Western painting is that a lot of times people, oh shoot, what's going on? Why is this? I hate it when this thing happens. Okay. A lot of times people think about how in Western art during the Age of Enlightenment in like the 1600s, 1700s, a lot of paintings started to look more realistic, and it proved how Europeans could really portray real life very well. And one of the things that they were known for was perspective paintings. And so perspective paintings mean that things that are closer to the closer to the viewer are bigger, and things that are farther are smaller, and they all kind of converge into a vantage point into the distance. Kind of like, if you look at my room, right, I'm bigger, and then this guitar in the back is in the distance, and you kind of see it converges into my door. So that's kind of perspective painting. But that's not the only way to paint things. And in a way, song paintings kind of have no perspective. They're almost raised up from a viewpoint from above. So you're kind of like looking down at the ground, and you can see both the foreground and the background kind of almost next to each other. And you're also not necessarily just concentrating towards a single vantage point, but you're kind of looking all around. And so this is a very, very famous painting. It's about a town in the Song Dynasty during a very important festival. It's called the Qing Ming Festival. No. Is it Duanwujie? Oh shoot, I forget. I will try to remember which one it is. But okay. Oh yes, at the Qingming Festival. Yes. So so take a look. I think you can't. Can you see this painting?
Yeah.
Or is it too small?
I can see it.
Pretty small, or it's kind of hard to see, right? Well, what if I expanded it to? Let's see.
There's a whole big bridge and everything. Wow.
Let me resize it.
Let's see, Qingming, or known as the Twin Sweeping Day in English. Wow. Okay. Chinese.
So this is what it really looks like. Do you see it now?
See if you could bring it to the front so that way all this text is in the way, if that helps.
Sorry, I'm just gonna make it into 100%. Okay, so this is what it's supposed to look like. Look, take a look at this amazing site. You see this painting?
That's a lot of people. I thought the place was flooded. Yeah, it's a lot of people walking around.
It's pretty crazy.
A whole bunch of people are just out.
Yeah. So actually, this thing goes very, very long. It's an enormous kind of panoramic view of the entire place, the city, and so you get all this kind of stories of all the things that people are doing in this time. It's fascinating. So that's one example of what you can, what Chinese, painting can do. I'm gonna just reduce it so you can see how big it really is. Oh shoot.
So yeah, I just looked it up here, and do you mind if I say what it is and whatnot?
Yeah, why don't you you can put the link to it in the group chat.
Sure, yeah, I'm just looking it up on my tablet.
Okay, I'll put a link to it in the group chat.
Okay. Oh man. Yeah, so from what I'm looking at here, it says the Qingming Festival is known as Tune Sweeping Day in English, and it's a traditional Chinese festival with the significance being to remember your ancestors, worship your ancestors.
Yeah. So it's the festival, yes, is the kind of ancestral worship day where you kind of clean the tombstone and just say hi to your relatives and respect them. So
Spanish people have that same kind of thing too. For the dead.
Yeah. I think any culture does, right? I think it's just fascinating how big it is, and how amazing that scene is. Any other thoughts about it before we move on?
So what on the extra credit thing you were talking about, I believe one of the topics were Joss paper.
Mm-hmm.
And they actually mentioned how you have to. One of the things you do during the Qingming festival is burning joss paper, which is known as ghost or spirit money.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it seems like joss paper seems pretty common in a variety of rituals. Yeah. Yeah. So great point. That it's about the everyday people's religious honorings and rituals. Even you know even in today's time, Qingming is still celebrated even in this modern time. It's important to honor your ancestors. It's not even superstitious. It's like it's just I don't know, honoring things. Does anybody celebrate Qingming?
I mean, I don't, but it'd be cool too.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's move on. So I wanted to. We have another. Uh, Hello, is who was that?
That's a car going by. I don't know who it is from, but
Oh, okay.
yeah,
That's
I
weird.
see.
yeah.
Okay, so the cool thing about Chinese painting is that it is very much connected to Chinese calligraphy. I think you guys can think about it in the same art form. Why do you guys? So let me just go through this. Chinese painting is not through oil paints, but through black and white watercolors, and
Oh, really?
it,
Okay.
it takes it takes a lot of skill to do either Chinese painting or calligraphy. So that's why this is such a beautiful, refined art. And many different painters are known for many different personal styles. And there's a lot of influence from Taoism, Buddhism again, and it's a lot of symbolic quality. So even taking a look at this picture, um, maybe take a look. What is it? What is it showing? This picture.
Looks like a fight.
What?
Yeah, it looks like someone
Like,
riding.
oh, never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, someone riding a donkey.
Yeah, someone riding a donkey is take notice how many lines there are. Are there that is it very detailed?
No.
I mean, to get like all like for the guy, like looking closer, it doesn't take too many lines, but I'd assume so for like drawing the donkey and whatnot, to get the proper like look of the fur and whatnot.
It seems both simple and complicated. Like there's not that many lines, and there's a lot of white space where nothing is done, and yet it creates this great image through our imagination, right? And there seems to be a lot of skill with being able to use different kinds of brushstrokes. So that's the main thing about watercolors. If you've ever done watercolor before, it's usually pretty frustrating when you're a kid and you start doing it. Because it's impossible to control in a lot of ways. You can't really control how different things, what different inks and waters go. So you almost have to just have faith but have practice and understand that certain things will have very thick lines and some things will have thick lines. Yeah. Any other thoughts about this painting and how watercolors might affect it?
I mean, all in all, it's just you gotta have a dexterous hand for calligraphy. So again, I respect anybody who's able to do proper calligraphy.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Well, I think that's, yeah, I think there's a lot of place. I have this book, Chinese Painting, and it has some beautiful other paintings as well. A lot of them are very weird. Like this one has like a cat person. I just kind of randomly went to it, and I wouldn't say a horse or a boar. Oh, this is actually from Japan. No, this is in a Japanese museum, but it is Chinese. Yeah, but it's showing you like there's just a lot of diversity of Chinese painting. Maybe I'll flip to another random one. A lot of this is almost oh, well, a lot of these are from earlier times. These are like depicting Tang Dynasty, like the presence of horseback riding. But let's take a look. This one, these are from the Song Dynasty. This is beautiful. Look at this landscape painting. Is again, you see how a lot of the mountains are not painted because of mist, right? Because it's supposed to look like mist.
Right.
But and yet it creates a great sense of space and yeah. Let's see. Oh, this is the one that we just talked about.
Oh, there is the
Yeah.
monk writing.
Oh.
Yeah. So yeah. So if that's of interest to you, I encourage you guys to look into it. Another connection to Chinese painting that you guys might know, might hit a little closer to home is this dude. His name is Tyrus Wong, and he was a Chinese American. He came over here when he in like the early, I want to say, in like in the 1920s when he was 6 years old, and he went through a place called Angel Island, which is where the American government forced Chinese people to go through during the time of Chinese exclusion. So but when he grew up, he was a painter. He trained as a painter, and he worked for Disney and Warner Brothers. And the picture that you see on the top right hand is one of his concept art. So he created concept art that inspired the backgrounds for Bambi. Walt Disney looked at his artwork and said, this is a great way for me to be able to portray the forest of the world of Bambi. It's very detailed and has like all these layers, right? How do you paint all these trees, right?
Right.
Well, in the Western traditions, a lot of animators would, in the movie that came before this, Snow White, would draw every single tree, every single branch, every single leaf, and it would be exhausting. But take a look at his painting. Is he able to do as much detail, as much life, imply as much action, but probably with less effort?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see how. Yeah, this is a scene of that fire where in that movie, and you just by using watercolors, using the expressionistic qualities of the watercolor, he's able to do a lot more. I was going to send you guys, I would let you guys watch a video about Tyrus Wong, but I'll be honest, I think YouTube is having a hard time right now because of the over usage of their website. So I'm not going to do that, but I'm gonna send you guys a link right now to this in case you do want to know. So this is a Wikipedia, and there are some really interesting videos too. So this is Tyrus Wong. Yeah. Any other thoughts about Tyrus Wong?
Apparently he redid a mural. He restored a mural by Fu Dingsheng in 1984, and it's in LA Chinatown.
Yeah, so he was from Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
He that's where a lot of definitely a lot of Disney, that's where Disney and a lot of Hollywood happens. And he was part of a scene of a lot of Chinese Americans in that time period, and they all helped each other out. And I think that restaurant was a hot spot for that one scene. So yeah, cool. Great. Well, I think that's pretty much it for the week. I don't want to keep you guys for much longer, but I do want to ask you guys for some feedback. So this is a time for feedback. Let me know. You can either call out, talk to me. Let me know if you like how we did the class, or you would prefer something different.
Well, I mean, I like how it's. I mean, because again, this is unusual. I've never done anything like this so far. But yes, Samantha said she thinks it was fine, and Layla as well. And for me, I think it was good as well. The class. I mean, it felt like I was just sitting in class regularly.
Okay. Do you guys feel like are there any particular issues, especially with the pandemic, that you would like to be more addressed in class?
No, not really.
Yeah,
This is
no, I
just all
mean,
new to me.
Yeah,
again,
I want to help you guys out. So yeah, any
right.
questions you have? You know, any pressing questions you have so right now?
No, I think we're good. I mean, we were able to discuss as well, about the Wuhan virus, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. This is what I want to do. I want us to really take this by you know just take advantage of the fact that our class is literally about a place that where the world is talking about this place right now because of the pandemic. So if you find articles, if you find videos, if you find TV segments that are really interesting, please share them on our discussion board, and I will be giving you a discussion board prompt. If you participate today, you don't need to reply, but everyone else has to reply to the discussion board prompt. And if you want to just, I encourage you to. Great. So I guess I'll see you guys next Friday, and please do the midterm exam. But I will be lenient if you need more time, and
All right.
and look out for a better a more detailed assignment sheet. So I did give you the assignments just now, but in the beginning of the class. But here again, especially for Jonathan, who I think you missed it. But so do you see? This is the written assignment plan. We only have one assignment. It's either a paper, at least 2 pages, double spaced, or a presentation, 5 minutes. That's like a PowerPoint presentation, like what I do. That will review an article from SupChina.com or South China Morning Post. These are 2 resources that I really like. If you have a place that you think is better, are less members.
You cut off, Professor.
You can show me. I want a good, maybe a good WeChat, Weixin post you can send me. That would be good.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on board. Thank you, Matthew and Jonathan and Xiangjiang and Zhishui and Samantha and Frederick and Layla. Frederick, can I ask, Frederick, are you Frederick Ince or Frederick Barrera?
His audio's been connecting for a while, so I don't know what's going on with him.
I think I probably can figure it out from the list of people who are hosts are here. So let me see. No, I only see Frederick. Frederick. Are you Frederick Ince or Barrera? Okay. Well, I don't want to keep any of you guys for too much longer. So thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you guys next Friday. And please feel free to email me anytime with any questions or anything. And good luck to you, and keep take it one day at a time, and don't be forgiving to yourself and to other people. We're all in this together, even though we also have to be separate because we do not want to pass the virus. So, Any questions? Thoughts?
None. Just I hope everyone stays safe. Wash hands and whatnot, all that stuff.
Yeah, just everything. Quarantine. To go out only when you need to, and be careful. And if you do need to be working right now, let me know if you have any issues. Like I would say tell your boss, like, I don't know if I can go out, or is there sick leave,
Right.
and or what's going on. So yeah. Okay, thank you, Changjiang. Thank you so much. All right, well, I'm gonna stop this. Have a good weekend, and bye, everybody.
All right, you too, Professor. Goodbye.
Bye.